Welcome to this week's episode of Success and Women, the show about women helping women. Now, before we get started, as you can see, I'm here today on my own. My co-host Andrea couldn't be here, but I'm here, and I have to tell you a little story. Andrea and I both ended up taking a vacation at the same time. She was there with her family in Florida, and I decided, well, why not join her? I mean, I have my own place, but why not come down and have a little mini holiday? One of the things that I rarely ever do is go to a movie. Now, I know for a lot of you, no one's gone to the movies in the last 2.5 years because of COVID. But this was an opportunity for me, not just to go to a movie where I haven't been in a long time, but actually see something that I enjoyed immensely, and it's why I wanted to share that. There's a new Elvis Presley movie out that depicts his life in a way that is magical. It really is. He was truly a wonderful man, and it's interesting from the humble beginnings that he had, where he came, and obviously his unfortunate demise, but his love of people, his love of music, and doing what he wanted to do to make everybody happy. And it's interesting because today's topic is, how do you know how your relationship really is going? Now, most people don't ask the question, how would you rate me? If you're in a romantic relationship, whether you're married or dating, how would you rate our relationship on a scale from 1 to 10? And they tell you. And in a lot of cases, you know the average is going to be 7. I mean, unless something's unless something is really bad, you know that probably it's an easy answer for a lot of people, and they're going to say, yeah, I think our relationship is a 7. And you think, well, that's not bad. 7's above average. It's better than, a 4 or a 3 or anything even lower. But then you think, what would it take to make the relationship a 10? So you asked your partner, what would it take to make our relationship a 10? And they may tell you things that you actually weren't even aware was important. Now imagine if you did this with your children, maybe with a friend. How about your employer? Or if you're the boss having your own company, how about if you ask your employees? And I mean, you'd have to do this individually. Because then you'd find out things that you didn't know, maybe didn't want to know, maybe didn't want to have to address for whatever reason. Because some things deep down, when you're being told this, you're not 100% surprised. And why is that? It's really because you knew you weren't giving it your all. Now, I took a course with Jack Canfield actually back in, I've taken several, but the first one I took with Jack Canfield in 2012. And he taught us this in our course. And the course was really about training and public speaking. But in the end, you need to know how you are with your audience. Now, not that you're going to go up to everybody in the audience, but a lot of times you will get feedback forms and saying, rate this. Maybe on that rating form, you might want to change it to say, how would you rate us on a 1 to 10? And then you ask the next question, what would have made this presentation even better, a 10? Imagine if you could get some people actually giving you that kind of feedback, and you taking that, and the next time you present, you do the same thing, but you make the changes. And now when you're asking your audience for the feedback from 1 to 10, and a lot of the things that you would already got from the first audience, you've already implemented, so that shouldn't be coming back again. But now the new audience, maybe you spent too much time maybe pitching products. Most times when you go on a webinar or in a live seminar, even though you may have something to sell, people don't want to be sold anything. They're there because they want to learn from you. And you're thinking, but I make my living selling. You're not really selling, although you are a salesperson, or you could be. The fact is, what you're trying to do is solve people's problems. So when you're getting your feedback and they're saying you're spending too much time pitching them, but not showing them ways to solve their problem, or by doing certain things, and if you work with me, we can resolve these problems that you have. How different would that make your life, your presentations? And then again, if you're not the owner, what happens if you're actually the person that is working for a boss, but you're trying to get a promotion? Now, imagine going into your boss's office and saying, I've been working here for X amount of time, and I personally think I'm doing a really good job. I try my best. I'm always on time. I'm learning. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But I'm not sure how you feel about the work that I'm doing for the company. And imagine you saying to your boss, so in order for me to improve where I'm lacking, if I am, I'd like to know right now as an employee, where do I stand from a scale from 1 to 10? Now you're going to catch your boss off guard, because I don't think a lot of bosses have thought about their employees in that way. And you just say, listen, I really need to know on a scale of 1 to 10, how good I'm doing at my job. And again, if they say a 6 or a 7 or even an 8, and you say, well, that's pretty good, or you could say it's pretty bad, depending on where it's at. But then your next question is, what would make it a 10? For me to be an outstanding employee with this company, what would make it a 10? What would I need to do? And this is the boss's opportunity to explain exactly what you need to do to improve, to get to that 10. Now, I was reading about an example of another person again that learned this from Jack Canfield, and many people have been taught by Jack Canfield, and so a lot of us have learned this lesson. And Jack says he uses it with his wife as well, because every so often he just wants to make sure he's on track being a good husband. And it's easy for anybody to fall back into a routine of being busy and neglecting their family, their partner, their neighbors, their friends, their boss, their colleagues, wherever, whomever. So every so often you want to know if you're still tracking, and if you're not, where you can pick up the slack. But anyway, this lady that learned this thing from Jack Canfield, this scale of rating relationships, she asked her son, and he's a child, and he doesn't really fully understand what it's all about and what his mom is getting at. But she said to her son, as a mom, if you had to rate me from 1 to 10, what would I be? And he said, after thinking about it for a few seconds, he said, I think you'd be a 7. And she thought, well, that's pretty good, because she's a busy woman, she's a single mom, and she felt like that's pretty good from her child, thinking that she's okay as a mom. But then thinking about it, she said and asked the next question. Well, what would it take for me to be a 10, in your opinion? And because she was a single working mom, very busy, his answer came, and typical of many children, I would want to spend more time with you. You're away a lot, and I don't see you, and I miss you. And in order for it to be a better relationship, I would want to spend more time with you. And she thought about that. And one of the things that she ended up having to do, because she not only worked hard and a lot, but she traveled a lot, which meant she had to leave her son with other caregivers. And that didn't sit well with him either. So what she ended up doing was going and taking him out of the one school he was in, putting him into a school that was flexible in their scheduling so that he was allowed to travel with her anytime that he wanted to while she was going. But of course, he still had to maintain his grades, which meant he had to partly be doing homeschooling, so that when he would go back in regular class, he was actually always caught up. Anyway, this arrangement actually worked well with the school, worked well with her son, and in the end, after traveling quite a bit with his mom and having to do his schoolwork on the road, he had decided that as a teenager now, he was contented to stay at home when she had to travel. So for the most part, he wasn't traveling with her. So she decided again to say, how would you rate our relationship now? And he said, it's a 9. And she said, a 9? Well, that's good. It's better than the 7 that you gave me. But what would make it the 10? He said, yeah, I kind of feel weird giving you a 10 because that would mean the relationship's perfect. And in this teenager child, in this teenager's mind, he had a hard time believing that anybody could be perfect, including his mom. But she said, but if I really was working towards getting that 10, really worked hard, what would you say I needed to do to actually earn you telling me I'm a 10 as a mom? He said, well, actually, doing what we're doing now, watching movies together, sitting here talking, eating popcorn, just enjoying each other when we can. And so, of course, she made that her mission, to spend more time when she was at home, spending more time talking and listening, and of course, sharing movies, things with her son. And I know that nobody's really perfect. You have to give yourself that from experience and knowledge. But if you could be a 10 in your son or daughter's life, or your spouse's life, or your boss's life, it's not saying that you're a perfect person. It's saying that you're doing your best to meet up to the standards of what they consider a 10 for whatever the relationship is that you have. And maybe you never get better than an 8 or a 9. But if you started off at a 4 or a 5 or a 6, it's still an improvement. And imagine how much better your life would be if you knew now what people actually think of you on a scale of 1 to 10, and actually telling you where the downside is, in the sense of if they had that, and this is an improvement that you'd have to make, they would rate you a higher amount. I think it's pretty good. And you know, kind of wish I would have learned this many, many, many years ago. Now, in some cases, in order, and you could be asked a question, What would make them, say for example, as a mom, and you, your son or daughter is asking you, what would make me a 10 in your eyes as your son or daughter? Or if it's your spouse. Now in my case, I don't think my husband ever could have been a 10, as much as he was a great partner. But one of the things that I would have wanted him to do to be a 10 was actually to stop drinking, because he's an alcoholic. And because it's his life and his choice, it's something that I could never get him to meet that 10, because that was a choice he was making for himself. But at least you know, and you've put it out there, what it would take to be the 10. You can't make anybody do anything they don't want. And if that's the best that they can give, you accept it or you move on. But it's the same with your job. Now, you're not going to tell your kids you're moving on from them. You do the best as a parent, and hopefully they do the best they can, being that the kid that they are, until they grow up and mature and realize all the life lessons that you've been teaching them. Because normally they will come back and they will appreciate all the things that you've done. It won't always happen on your schedule. It'll probably happen on theirs. But knowing as a mom how you could improve just by asking the questions on the scale of 1 to 10, how you rate in their eyes, in their opinion, but also in their opinion, what would it take for you to become a 10? And you keep working on that until you eventually get that person saying you're a 10. So you might go every month and do all the little improvements and say, okay, I've been, working on this and working on that. How would you rate us now? And if they move up, that's great. But if it's still not a 10, there's still room for improvement. And I don't think Elvis and his mom ever ranked each other, but Elvis had his mother that she couldn't be, more than what she was, and he loved her unconditionally, and it was such a great relationship. And that's why, if you haven't seen the movie, I encourage you to do that. And normally I would never do that because we all have different tastes, but Elvis really was the king, and for a reason. And the person who portrays him is excellent. So if you just want to know a little bit more about, again, how you can be that 10 in somebody's life, don't be afraid to ask, because on your road to success, you need feedback. And again, it could be positive feedback, negative feedback, feedback that you're not going to actually use, because you don't have to take everyone's feedback 100%. It's not to say that they're right and you're wrong, but it's always good to question once in a while to see if you're on the right track. And if you want to be successful, it wouldn't hurt you, ladies. So, I'm Linda. My co-host Andrea will be back shortly. But for the next couple of weeks, it's just me. Hopefully, you share, you like, and you subscribe. All we're trying to do is help you on your journey to success in whatever that is. So until next week, thank you.